tie-up along highway activity. The problem with youth gangs is the focus of a two-part series we begin this evening. In part one, reporter Dirk Martin talks with gang members, past and present, in the city of Watsonville. He takes us to a world where crime, violence, and misguided pride go hand in hand.
This is girlfriend.
These young men are the stuff gangs are made of. They are members of the Watsonville City Hall Gang, one of 3 major gangs known to exist in the city. Being a gang member isn't simply a matter of saying you are one. You have to belong. You have to be accepted. It's not only knowing how to flash hand signals or having a gang name tattooed into your skin. You have to be willing to back up your claim and go down for the gang. Fight if you have to.
You don't listen. You can't tell someone not to gang bang. You gotta show them. Hey, you gotta show them you're out of gang banging before they can listen to you. See, before these kids can listen to anybody else, they gotta watch you first. These kids don't see. They don't see words. They see actions.
But if you get in fights and people get knives, you're gonna get in trouble with the law.
That's a different story.
Why is that a different story?
Because I don't know, that depends the way it goes.
For the most part, these City Hall locos, as they like to be called, reveal little about themselves or what they do away from the limelight of television news cameras. What you see here is gang machismo. What you don't see is the other side of the gangs, the darker side. Gang life is violent. Competing gang members stab and shoot each other over pride and territory, often resulting in serious injury and sometimes death.
When somebody's in a gang, it really involves the whole family. Because when something happens, it doesn't only happen to that person involved in the gang.
Even though Liz Ayala has never been a gang member, she and her family have been victimized by the brutality of gang violence. In 1980, Liz's 15-year-old cousin, Lucio Garcia, was one of 2 teenage boys stabbed to death by rival gang members in what is now known as the infamous Mount Madonna murders.
1980. Just the way it happened, we were all really... It was a shock to the whole family, because the way it happened, when our cousin getting stabbed, it was over 40 times. And the way they found him, and then reading the newspaper clippings sometimes, it would hurt. You just felt like going out there and doing something really crazy.
However, each side has an opportunity to explain to you what...
If you're going to participate in a gang, and you're going to participate in the unlawful objectives of that gang that are illegal and crimes, then you're going to be held accountable.
And that's exactly what happened to 21-year-old Juan Lopez. Lopez was convicted for taking part in the drive-by shooting murder of Louis Woody Sandoval. Sandoval, a member of Watsonville's North Side Gang, was gunned down in front of the city's library November 2nd, 1988.
When a white car came, a Pinto, and Woody was coming this way, and as soon as some guy came out, he went to a rifle like that, and all he did is shot him right here.
And although Lopez did not pull the trigger and was merely the driver in the car in which the fatal shotgun blast came from, he was tried for first-degree murder. The prosecution invoked a new gang enhancement law that allows increased sentences for people convicted of gang-related crimes. Juan Lopez currently is serving a 15-year-to-life sentence in prison.
My best friend got killed, and a couple of other friends,
For the past 2 years, Marciano Cruz has remained clean. Cruz was a member of the Santa Cruz Eastsiders gang. But what began as something fun to do quickly turned to a life of drugs, violence, and crime. Cruz survived in places many of us shudder to think of. Places like Folsom and San Quentin Prison. Places where gang members frequently end up.
When you're doing time, you have to take care of yourself.
When you say take care of yourself, what do you mean?
Take care of yourself like mean watch yourself. Because over there's nowhere you can run, there's nowhere you can hide. And there's no homeboys to back you up, unless you know them.
playing tomorrow?
You want to go to the beach?
46.
Marciano now spends his time helping kids. He works for the Santa Cruz City Parks and Recreation Program as director of the Beach Flats Kids Club. But regardless of what Marciano Cruz does in the future, he will always have to carry the burden of his past. Like the gang tattoos on his arms, the scars are permanent. Unfortunately, it's a mistake which others are sure to make unless the cycle is broken.
When you are there, you want to be free, you want to do these things, you know? But when you, and again, you don't think about it. You don't think about helping somebody, but getting commitments to do something for your community. You know what I mean? And so when I come out, I thought it was going to be easy for me just to get a job. And the reason it wasn't easy for me is because the things that I've done before.
Breaking that cycle will not be easy. It's going to take time and a lot of effort, community effort. Tomorrow night in part 2 of Watsonville Gangs, we're going to tell you what the people of Watsonville are doing to solve this problem. In Watsonville, Dirk Martin, KMST News.
Gang activity on the Central Coast. One city is trying to stop the gangs by stopping their recruitment of young people. In part 2 of our series, Watsonville Gangs, Dirk Martin tells us it's an uphill battle, but a battle that can be won.
Learning from past mistakes, this may be the best way to describe current efforts to fight the gang problem in Watsonville. Following the Mount Madonna gang murders 10 years ago, community leaders in Watsonville pledged to get gangs off the streets. But in the end, this pledge had more bark to it than bite. Granted, people were convicted for those murders and sent away to prison. But Watsonville was soon to learn that by merely locking people up and throwing away the key doesn't mean that the problem will also go away. By the end of the 1980s, gangs and crime and violence associated with those gangs had returned. But this time around, the community of Watsonville says it has a plan. According to the experts, these kids are the key to solving the gang problem in Watsonville. Although not in the gang, these elementary and junior high age kids are under the influence of gangs. They're called wannabes or chicos, kids who want to be part of the gang scene but haven't crossed over the line.
What you'll have is, say, maybe you have Northside Locals, which is one of our criminal street gangs. And then down here you'll have a sect which is called the Northside Chicos, which are all the little wannabe kids that want to be Northside members, but they're down here. Eventually they graduate up here. Same thing with Poorside.
Watsonville Police Detective Eddie Rodriguez is a member of the South County Gang Task Force, a multi-agency task force involving education, youth services, recreation, and drug and alcohol recovery. The group meets weekly. The goal is to identify potential gang members and get to them before the gangs do.
Let me just say a gang member, period. Somebody who's already committed to the gang. That person's got his mind made up, but what we're focusing on is what we want to do is focus on these younger kids that haven't made that commitment yet, and eventually weed out gang membership through attrition, so to speak.
Frank Black. Here they make contact with gang members, learn how they operate, how they communicate.
What you see is the gang identification. We were talking about 13 and 14. You see them claiming 13 right here. But right here in Spanish they're called placazos, and basically what they are is their gang monikers. And for the most part, a lot of these guys, they know each other by their monikers more so than their name. Graffiti is important to us because that's how we identify who's active and which gang and all that.
Although it's an adversarial relationship, these contacts build trust with gang members, and especially the wannabes.
Kick their ass, Bubba.
Well, who are they?
We don't know them.
Well,
Don't try to run me over.
Were they yelling anything or any colors?
Huh?
They stabbed one of my friends.
Okay.
The stomach.
Okay. Was that the one up here?
It's a weekend.
Yeah, you know who they stabbed, Corey? That black guy.
Chocolate.
Chocolate.
Yeah, chocolate man. Chocolate man.
Okay.
Hey, but Corey's not with you guys anymore, right?
Huh?
Isn't he with City Hall now?
Who?
Corey.
I don't know.
He's claiming City Hall.
I think so.
In terms of their lives? Why would someone get involved with gangs when it's clear gang life is a dead-end street? For many kids, it's a way to be accepted, to have respect, a way to find self-esteem.
They want to identify with somebody. They want to feel important. They want to feel that their life isn't as good as somebody else's. And you put all these kind of kids together, they kind of come together like a magnet. And if you have a reason for being, which could be as simple as this is your block or your area of town, there is a certain amount of self-esteem and different kinds of positive feelings, even though it may be expressed negatively.
Why is it worth fighting over?
Because we always hanging on the spot, and this is ours, and they hang on their spot. They do their stuff, we do our stuff.
But will Watsonville's gang deterrence program work? If it does, it will not happen overnight. Gang history runs deep in this town. But already the task force says it has 6 to 7 kids who are willing to listen to alternatives. That's 6 or 7 more kids than the task force had only 2 months ago when it began. In Watsonville, Dirk Martin, KMST News.
So far, the Watsonville Gang Task Force has identified 150 hardcore gang members and about 250 associates.